Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another live broadcast from Jacob's Ladder. Oh, we have so much to discuss, and as always, I am your host, Jacob Israel. How's everybody doing? We got so many people here already in the live chat, already smashing the like, so we get record-breaking numbers. Because the Jubilee is coming. You know what that is? That's a good thing. Oh. But some stuff has to happen before that happens, and it's called the Dark Night of the Soul, which, by the way, happens to do with the 11/11. We're going to find that out on today's show. We're going to actually look at, if you're new to the channel, welcome! So happy you're here. I'll blow the shofar for you later. That's right, because that's what sounds right before the Jubilee begins. We have a lot of stuff that happens in the world. All of these things, from like major sporting events to just stuff that just happens. Names of certain individuals. When you take it all apart and you peel it back layer upon layer, there's a story. And when you look at this thumbnail, what a story indeed. Can anybody tell me what in the background they see? That's a bunch of wheat. Because at the very end, I don't know if you know this or not, but at the very end, there's a separation of those wheat and that tare. It's a symbol of the lies and the truth that's within us, the good and the bad, the God and the devil. That's right. You World Series fanatics? Because we're going to be talking about the World Series. It's over with. The Texas Rangers. They won. That's right. They won 5-0. When you take a look at that thumbnail, you're probably thinking what Danielle was thinking when I said, "What do you think of this?" She goes, "It's too busy. It's too much going on." You probably heard about that terrible tragedy that happened with the hockey player. This is heavy stuff. This is a heavy show. It's a good show. It's going to be an encouraging one. But what we're going to do is we're not going to look at the overall literal meaning of things. We're going to peel back the spiritual layer. And I don't know if you've noticed, but in the last couple of shows, I've been talking about the Batman. The Batman. That's right, the Dark Knight. And it is here. But first, let's start with some encouragement. Let's talk about the old Texas Rangers. Anybody watch Lord of the Rings? I was just talking to Michael Scott on X. Check check him out on X. He's got some really cool stuff. And I told him, because he had shared something with me, and I said, "Oh, do you know that the Ranger from Lord of the Rings, he turns out he's like a picture of Christ." There you see that picture of Donald Trump. Remember a little while ago, the return of the great MAGA king? Well, that's what we can expect. Oh my goodness, I'm looking at the time right now. I wonder if I started at like 111. I wonder if I did. That would be very cool. But if you're new, last couple of shows, you should probably do a little catch up. Probably watch them. And you'll find that last couple of shows I've been talking about the spiritual meaning of the Texas Rangers. You got that T, looks like that Trump T, but it really has to do with the Tav, which is the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet. And it looks like a cross. In Middle Hebrew, it looks like an X. You know how you see X everywhere now? X this, X that. Everything's X, right? Everything's become X. Even the debt clock has some hidden things that I'm going to share today. You're going to see X there too. Something's interesting's going on. Who here is excited? Oh, now someone just told me, yes, it was 111. How cool is that? That wasn't even on purpose. I was just like rushing to get things together. But the Rangers win their first World Series in a 5-0 victory over the Diamondbacks. And of course, all you got to look at, there's the picture of the cross, there's the picture of the snake. That's why I sort of predicted, didn't I? How many people tell me in a live chat, I told you not to bet. I said, if anything, like $5, but I said I had a feeling the Rangers are going to win. Just because of the symbolism of it, because of the day we're in, 2023. This is what I've been saying for a long time. All the stuff's going down. It's exciting. But you get a picture of the Rangers. You get a picture of Christ winning over the enemy, the serpent, if you will. You get that final battle. It's like right there in the logos, which is very cool. Are we going to see the return of the great MAGA king? I have a feeling we are. But But what does that mean? Is that a good thing? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Some people think he's the bad guy of the story. If you have watched my channel for long enough, you probably know that according to 1 John and other passages, the Antichrist, I know you're waiting for it, John says, but there are many in the world, okay? It's like the thing that's operating within the temple of God, declaring itself to be God already, getting you to bow down and worship a bunch of lies and nonsense. But will there be a literal character that's going to stand up and become this character? This is going to be something that time is going to have to tell. I don't want that to happen, but I do know that that's basically what happens in the very end. But there's something to this World Series. Wow, we got a lot of people here already. We got a lot of people here. And thank you so much for the super chat if I missed you. I missed you, Shelly. I'm sorry about that. I appreciate it. Yeah, please hit the like, because this is one of those shows that is just going to, I think it's going to really encourage you, and it's going to probably freak you out. But what else is new? That's kind of like, that's kind of par for the course. Now, 50. I saw that 5-0 and I said Jubilee. I actually put a tweet out, a post, excuse me. I put a post out, and it said the Rangers, in parentheses Tav, win the World Series for the first time. Then I say in the Bible, 50 is connected to the Jubilee. This is something that I said was coming. A time of restoration where slaves are set free, debt is forgiven, and wealth is redistributed. Explains why the debt clock secret window is acting all weird, huh? It's also when God's Spirit is poured out on the world. Very interesting. Very interesting. You know, if you look at that top right-hand corner, that's the real Kim Shady. She's on X, and also you can find her on Patreon. But it was funny because before I went live, I do my little thing where I post things out, and I want to let people know. If you want to know how, when I go live, so you can be here, so I can, hopefully maybe even interact with you when I see you, you should, hook up with me on Telegram. I put alerts out there. That's all I do. I just put out an alert, or on X, I put out an alert, and you got to stay involved, And remember, I do a show like every other day, not even like, pretty much every other day. And I'm going to continue to do that until something changes. So you always know I got something new waiting for you. But if you want to be here live, whether it's this or the live premieres where I'll produce a show, because I try to give you a mix. I want to make sure that I'm, because I know some people prefer videos that are produced. Some people prefer live. I like to kind of just give you a mix. You want to catch both? Make sure that you're hooked up with me. But Kim Shady, she puts out this. She reposted this Hollywood golden age of cinema. The Wizard of Oz was televised for the first time in history on November 3rd. I think it was like 67 years ago. I'm not good with math. I don't know. But listen to what the next line reads. The Wizard of Oz was broadcast as the finale of the Ford Star Jubilee. Jubilee. What are the odds? In here, like right before she put that post up, and I told her, I said, you should be watching my show. Hope you watching? You watching? Let everybody say hi to everybody in the live chat. Everybody, we need more people. Some people are telling me they're very lonely. We got a lot of amazing, wonderful people that are part of this. We'll say, this journey that we're all on together. The Israelites. Just hook up with each other, become friends with each other, contact each other, encourage each other. That's the day that we're in. But let me tell you a little bit, because investing.com, which they're a big whatever company. You probably heard of them, probably seen their commercials, but they put out this article, speaking of jubilees, about a debt jubilee of biblical proportion that's coming. What are the odds of that? Here I title my show The Jubilee, and I do the thumbnail and everything else yesterday. And then as I'm putting the show together and I'm doing a little research last night, I find this article. And I think to myself, well, that's very, very interesting. And they point out the fact that thousands of years ago, it was done this in Babylon and everything else, the ruling elite, like when things got a little too bad for people, a little too hard for people, they realized that if they just we're going to forgive you your debt. We're going to forgive you this. We're going to forgive you that. Forget your college loans, right? Like where Biden our time just did. We're going to forgive you that debt. We're going to forgive you this debt. Well, guess what? I think there's going to be an even bigger one coming. Bigger one because people are fed up, right? So what they did back then was every so often, it would be like the 50th year, they would release things. This was in the scriptures as well. Widespread debt cancellation, they call it a debt jubilee. A jubilee. To release the social pressure and the social release of people's anxieties and stresses after a 7-year cycle. 7 cycles of 7 years, 50 years. Interesting, right? It gets more interesting. It gets a lot more interesting when you start to... I've been talking about the debt clock a lot, right? I've been talking about this. Now, I for many years, have said that this day is coming. Exactly when, but it's... If you know anything about this debt clock, it's like a big time site, and it basically predicts all of the, the debt to the 10th of a whatever fraction of a whatever. Supposedly it's like the best gauge of, everything that's going on monetarily in the United States, or I guess maybe even around the world. I don't know. I'm not an accountant. I don't know. I'm an economist. I don't know nothing about nothing. That's why I got to work so hard. If I was all about making money and everything else, I would be nice, but I think things would be a little bit different. I wouldn't be so dependent on the grace of God. It's a fearful thing. Just get more than you need. That's what God wants. You to know that you're going to be all right. You'll always be taken care of. The birds of the air, they have grass to eat and berries and worms to eat. God will take care of you too. But they've had all of these weird things on the debt clock. Now, what's funny is the lead character of my novel, I have a book, right? I'm also an author. That was my claim to fame. I'm a writer. This is The Calling. It's out right now. You can get a copy on Amazon. It's got over thousands of reviews, 5 stars, because you all love it. And you could read about it and learn. It's a great book. You should get the book. The lead character's name is Thomas. Thomas means twin. What's interesting is this character, Casey, thank you very much for the super chat. This character that we are seeing on these secret windows on the debt clock, his name's Thomas X. And if you look at the very center one, you'll see stolen wealth, and you'll see Thomas X pulling the plug. The top plug is an X, and it's gold. And I think it has something to do with crypto, but I don't know much about crypto. The one just from November 2nd was of the Federal Reserve Vault. Do not enter. Spooky. Just earlier, we were talking about the Wizard of Oz. There's the Tin Man saying money creation is a scam only a wizard could love. Elon was just on Joe Rogan. They had a very interesting interview, and he said he was dressed as half a wizard. So it's interesting. MAGA means wizard. Means witch in Latin. It's interesting. But the World Series, let's get back to it. Okay? Let's get back to it, because this really has to do with Christ. This has to do with the very end. This has to do with, the king rising, and taking over and making things right. It's very interesting. Well, so on the show just recently, I talked about all of the interesting things that were connected President to
George Bush.
Pause this. All the interesting things connected to, the Rangers. And of course, this is why I said that they were going to win. But let me make sure that the volume is on. Let's take a look at this right here. Oh, Shyla Cooper pointed out, you'll see in the clip that 22 is actually there as well. And you'll see the pitcher who was winning his number was 66. But here, let's just play this just as a quick little update for a couple people. And hopefully you hear this okay. Make sure that you tell me that you hear it. Because last time I think I forgot to turn up the volume. George Bush Jr. You remember Jr., right? I remember because I was doing a show in New York City right before that happened, the whole thing. And I remember him going out, marching out, going out into the field to throw out that pitch. It was like a big deal. You know, he was making a statement that we're not scared. Baseball's going to continue on. After that faithful day, 2001, throws out that pitch. And here we are, 22 years later, and he's coming out for the Texas Rangers. I just talked about the Texas Rangers. This team right here, the Rangers, they got the big T. I call that the Trump T, because the Trump, he wears that T, but it's also a cross. It's also known as the Tav. It's a symbol of like Christ. It's also a symbol of the people that are marked off in the end. This is according to like biblical prophecy in the book of Ezekiel. It's called like a mark before the world goes to hell in a handbasket and the war in heaven breaks out and all hell breaks loose. God marks off a bunch of people, the good people, the nice people, the wonderful people, the ones that have heart and want to do the right thing in the world. All of you, the witnesses. I'm a witness. You're a witness. Shouldn't more people want to be God's witness too? I think that's a song somewhere. But he threw it out. Game 3 of the World Series on, right after 9/11. And here we are. The World Series is 119 this time, 119th World Series. And he comes marching out and he throws it. It's looking good for his age, too. Look. A lot of people say, oh, it's not him. Like, I don't know. There's so many other things to be concerned about. I could care less if it's him or not. But I'll tell you one thing. He's wearing that shirt. And here we are. And the Diamondbacks, they haven't even been in the Super Bowl. I say Super Bowl. I think I said Super Bowl. I don't really follow sports. This is where we're talking about hockey. No, we don't want to talk about hockey. What just happened, that terrible thing. Guy got his throat slashed. Tone told me about that. My boy Anthony. All my boys growing up, big time hockey players. But it was the World Series. And the Diamondbacks, they haven't been to the World Series in what? 22 years. We actually are going to talk about hockey, by the way. Because we must peel back some layers on that. I believe Vicky said in the live chat, she said that in the first game, the Rangers won. It was 5 in the 11th inning. I'm not sure if I got that right, but like I said, I'm not the biggest sports guy. You'd have to talk to my two oldest, my three boys for that to be the case. But interesting, 22 everywhere. Been talking about that 22, right? That very first tweet that I put out, September 6th, top left-hand side of the screen. And you can see it says, I said breadcrumbs, soon you will see 22 everywhere. And then I explained that 22 means unmarried in Strong's. It's kind of like Christ, the picture of Christ, and the one that's not married coming together because it's the Tav and it's unmarried. And then the two become one. It's a beautiful thing where God and the soul of man unite finally. That was the point. But first, there's got to be a separation. You got to let the wheat and the tares grow up together. First, you got to get rid of the tares. You're going to bind them and you're going to cast them into the fire and you're going to get rid of them. So then, the true bride can stand up. This is the day we're in. Now, this is interesting because if you look at the word Tav, it is in the beginning, God created Elohim. That means rulers. It's a different name for God than you think. It's actually a multitude. The heavens and the earth. The Alpha Tav particle occurring in the Hebrew text is untranslated into English. In Strong's, it's a reflective. In the beginning, created God himself. How about them apples? Isn't that interesting? So that's a weird way of looking at it, but that's what they say. And in the Strong's, in the concrete noun form, it means us a mark, a sign. And that was what was written in the book of Ezekiel, not the bad mark, not the one where you're all like, oh, don't take that mark. It's another one. God, seals up people. It's kind of like, the blood above the doorpost when the dark angel of death comes in the dark night of the soul. You're covered by the blood. It's a sign. It's a symbol. That mark, same thing. So the alpha is the ox head, strength and power. The tav, cross sticks, like the X. Very interesting. Now there's a story from just the Hebrew words, and as the ox is driven toward a tent peg in the ground to be secured, toward a landmark in order to plow straight. So a powerful security mark has to be fastened as a covenant, as it's like a petition. It's like it's a contract. So it's kind of like you can't fail. You can't fail. That's the whole point of this, is that no matter what, it's the parable of the wheat and tares. It's the parable of the wheat and tares, and you're going to see this as we progress through this. Now, the 22, right? I wanted to share this with you because I thought this was interesting. On the show where I'm talking about how it's just weird that out of the blue I'm talking about 22 everywhere. Turns out somebody pointed out to me, I believe it was Bob versus Bob. That's right, Bob versus Bob. He pointed out to me that I say 22 at the exact 22 mark. Just take a look at this. This is interesting. This is really. You're going to see 22 everywhere. Can you imagine that post? At the time, people were like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Back in September, I'm like, you will see 22 everywhere. I just had a feeling. 22 How funny everywhere. Is that, right? I just had a feeling. You're going to see 20. So strange to me. Well, because God works all things together for the good of those that love the Lord, and these things are going to continue to happen. They're going to continue to happen. Things are going to continue to get weird, but that's okay because we want things to get weird, right? We want things to get interesting. Things they've been so boring, right? There's nothing to be stressed about. It's just smooth sailing. I joke. Uranus is not just a planet, by the way. It is also the name of heaven. You want to get this and make people happy and laugh every time they have a cup of coffee in the morning? You can get it in the description of the video, and then you can tell people, look, I got heaven in my hand. We found that out on the show. I didn't know this when I first did it. I did it at first with a joke. Someone made a, I think it was Death on X from Bill and Ted's. And he put out, how did the craters in the moon get there? And I said, Uranus. Because I'm like a child. All right, so let's talk about this hockey game. And once again, terrible what happened. Forget about casting blame and everything else. Both my boys are hockey players. Both of them said that, skate got clipped. So it was clearly... it was clearly an accident. There's a company that's now going to give out a bunch of neck guards, but to get things regulation through. Turns out I looked into this. This happens more than you'd think. I mean, it doesn't happen that often, but maybe 4-5 times a year, in big time sanctioned games, I guess. I don't know. But this was a real tragedy. And of course, there were a lot of people that were jumping on the bandwagon and turning this into something it wasn't. Some people that just said some really just terrible things. But I first mentioned it on my last show. I said, I don't want to talk about that. And the reason was because I didn't get a chance to truly digest it. I actually called my buddy Lancelot Knight. Called him up. Speaking of dark nights, he's not a dark knight though. He's a good guy. And we were talking to him and I'm saying, it's interesting. This guy, the guy who got his throat slashed, almost got his head lopped off. Basically, that's, scary, right? His last name is Johnson. I immediately think of, John the Baptist because his first name is Adam. So automatically I'm drawn to the name and I'm thinking Johnson right now is the Speaker of the House too. In the scriptures, it's written that up until John the Baptist, who ends up getting his head lopped off because, It's symbolic because after that happens, Christ's ministry takes off. But it happens, because of Salome and a whole other thing. But he was a representation. If you'll go with me on this, he is a representation of more like the religious man. Okay, so everybody has to go to the religious man to kind of get baptized by the religious man, if you will. It happens that way. That's why Jesus said to John, he says, suffer it to be so. He uses that word suffer, which I think is interesting. So, John, who knew that he should be baptized by Christ, he is forced to baptize Christ. And I believe, and have believed for a while, because Jesus said of men born of women, John is the greatest. But of those in the kingdom of heaven, he is less than the least in heaven. The least person in heaven would be like the last person in heaven. How does John the Baptist become less than the least? But of men born of women, he is the greatest. He's a picture of the religious man. He was 6 months older than his cousin. If you remember correctly, Mary and Elizabeth and the babe leaping in the womb. So Adam, a symbol of the first man, Adam, who brought death into the world. Then there's going to be the last man. That first man dies, so the last man. So I saw the symbolism there, and then I was like, let me dig a little bit deeper. Oh, and it gets so much more interesting. So right there, that's the poor guy who had this thing happen to him. He's the guy on the left, and you probably notice, what's that number he's wearing? The number that he's wearing, dudes and dudettes, because you're all my friends, and it's 22. And the number that Adam, John's son, is wearing is 47. 47 would be the next president of the United States. So, right off the bat, I look at the numbers and I'm like, of course, the guy who almost lops the other guy's head off, of course his number is 22, which is the Tav, which is a symbol of judgment and correction. It's very interesting. Now, this guy's name, let me just read the post that I put out on X, by the way. And if you're not following me on X, you probably should. You probably should. Just go to X, Jacob Israel 71 at Jacob Israel 71. Just and follow me, and then let me know, and then I'll follow you back. It's that easy, And then you can enjoy all the things that I post and I put out there as it goes down. And I put a lot of stuff out there where I want your help too. I ask a lot of you to get involved. And by the way, I'm going to ask all of you right here. We got 1,000 people watching, and we don't got that many people hitting the like. Hit the like and share this around after the show, and leave me a comment, because this is where the show is going to get very interesting. So what I wrote was, I said, Adam, known as the first man, John's son, the wild Baptist, had his head cut off. Number 47, the team that he plays for is called Nottingham. Now, if you think of Nottingham, what do you think of? You probably think of Robin Hood. That's what I do, at least. Nottingham, or Friar Tuck, one of the two. But what's weird about this is he plays on a team called the Panthers. So Notting means nothing. Okay? It means other things too. Believe it or not, it means bald. Another amazing, insightful person shared that with me too. They saw that I posted this and then they DM'd me. It also means bald. How about them apples? So you have Nottingham, nothing home, thief in a hood, playing for the Panthers. Now the word panther, by the way, is in the book of Revelation in regards to the Antichrist. How about them apples? Isn't that interesting? It's translated as leopard, but leopard and panther, they're the same thing. So it's interchangeable. Some might call it a panther, some might call it a leopard. Can a panther change its spots? Can a leopard change its spots? Interchangeable. Same meaning, same word, same animal, just translated differently. So when you see the word panther, is it in the Bible? Yes, many times. And it's in regards to the enemy of God. Weird that Adam, the guy who gets his throat slashed. Thank you, Elizabeth Moon, 1111. Always hit the like, Batman. Batman is, wait till we get to the Batman stuff. Whoa, you got no idea. This is just the appetizer. And this appetizer is a one that has eternal rewards. Literally. So, Adam Johnson playing for the Nottingham Panthers. Very interesting. Very interesting. He ends up getting a heel kick from Matthew. Who do we think of out of the disciples whose name is Matthew? I think of a tax collector. That's what I do. And his last name is Petgrave, which means with a serious petition. Here we go again with the petition. It's just weird. Once again, I said, this is just a tragic event. Maybe it means nothing. But you see, I believe in life that everything means something. So when people say, oh, why can't you just accept it? It's just it is. Why do you have to tear things apart and look at it? I said, do you want to believe that things have no meaning? Especially tragedy? I believe that everything has meaning. And I know that ultimately, even tragic events, when the glory of God is revealed, these tragic events, nothing matters. It won't matter. It's like waking up from a bad dream. You're like, woo! I learned something from that experience. I did indeed. Number 22, the Tav. Number 22. On Sheffield, Steelers. Sheffield. So number 22 is on Sheffield. You know what Sheffield is? You know what a sheaf is? When Christ came, they waved sheaves in the air. It was the thing, or palms too. Sheaves, it's a big thing. It's a harvest. In the end, you gotta divide the wheat and the tares. Literally, Sheffield means it's a pictorial celebration of the origins of Sheffield's name, right-hand side of the screen, top. This name is derived from the word sheaf or sheath. Sound the same, right? Because they are. With its meaning to divide and separate. And his last name, Petgrave, which means serious petition, or in African, means sacrifice. The Alpha Tav, the 22. The Tav, number 22, a picture of Christ, plays for the team that is going to divide the wheat and the tares, whose name is Matthew, coming to collect the tax, who is the sacrifice and holds in its hand a grave petition. Maybe it's just a guy playing hockey. I don't know. But then you look at the other player and you start to think to yourself, well, my goodness, this is strange. The other player's name is Adam, John's son, John the Baptist. Let me see if I can pull this up so I can just take a look at this. Let me show this to you right here. Boom. Adam Johnson, the Elite League postpones midweek game after this Panthers player. And you'll see the Aramaic term, Nemer, which in the New Testament Greek means panther or leopard. And there is the, oh my goodness, I forgot her name already. But thank you for that, where you see that ham and not, it means bald, and not ham means covering. So it's almost like a picture of, we've been talking about hair all the time. But that panther is found in Revelation 13, the beast. The dragon stood in the shore of the sea, and I saw the beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns, 7 heads, 10 crowns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast resembled a leopard. A leopard, but had feet like a bear, by the way. I've been posting on X, bears everywhere. I keep seeing them everywhere. Kanye's daughter dressed as a bear. There was like a viral video of bears in like little push carts. Maybe I could show it to you if I could find it. And it was funny. They were throwing stuff. People didn't know. They thought it was stuffed animals. But I was seeing bears everywhere. And then I kind of put this out to you. I said, well, look at we got to look. We got to look to finances. Speaking of debt jubilees, we got to look to what's going on with the money, because you think of the bear market, but you also think of that Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. So it's like I've been telling people, be on the lookout of these two things. And then, these two things continue to happen. But there is a wheat and tares judgment that comes down at the very end. Now, he plays for a team called the Steelers, the Sheffield Steelers. Hey, Lauren Sawyer, thank you for that super chat. Everybody smash that like And thank you for everybody who's supporting the channel in other ways, like the super chat is great or the super thanks. You know that you can come on if you don't catch it live. You can go and there's this thing called super thanks, and you can, do. And I see those pop up first when I go and I look at comments. So I appreciate that. That's a lot of people do that, and I want to thank you for that as well. So there is the parable of the wheat and the tares. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. By the way, we're the field. But while men slept, the enemy came, sowed tares among the wheat, went his way. But when the grain sprouted and produced a crop, the tares also appeared. So the servants of the owner said, "What do we do? What do we do?" And God says, "Well, yeah, the enemy has sowed the tares. That's how it happened." So the servants wanted to know, it's like, what do you want us to do? You want us to gather them up? And God says, no, because if you gather up the tares, you're going to also uproot the wheat. So it's like sometimes a truthful thought can appear like a lie. Sometimes a lie can appear like a truth. Now, how do we know the difference between the two in our heads? Well, when these things grow, when these seeds that were planted inside of us from when we were little ones, from all the lies that were planted in us, right? The enemy that planted the lies inside of us while we were ignorant, while we slept, and the good, they both grow up together. How do you know the difference between the two? When you become mature. Like wheat, by the way, has tons of seed in its head. So something that is truthful will produce good fruit. Something that's a lie will never produce good fruit. The tares don't have any seed. And you can tell the difference. Like if you go into a field, when they both start to grow up together, you can actually see what is the wheat and what is the tare, because the wheat, their heads bow down. It's being submissive to, you are in submission to God. You bow down your thoughts to God's thoughts, whereas the tares are going to stand straight up. They're Antichrist. And that's the picture in the end. But what happens, he tells the reapers. Now, we've been seeing a lot of reapers at events, right? We saw the one at the old, where the king got his crown. Remember the reaper showed up there? Then we had people were saying that there was a reaper in Congress, but it was just a cameraman. But the reapers come down, dark night of the soul, dark night, and they harvest, but they harvest the tares first. Okay? They harvest the tares first. They get rid of the bad stuff first. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people don't realize this. That's why I've been saying, if you're good, it's going to be okay. Because the judgment comes down on the tares. Those that are rooted in wickedness and everything else. It's not going to be fun. Torment is not fun. They talk about anybody who doesn't take the name, anybody who takes the mark, you'll be tormented day and night, forever and ever. But that really just means, the word aeonos in Greek means a period of time. You're going to be tormented again and again and again until you get rid of the lies and you submit yourself to God, and you learn the hard way. The word torment itself, that's the purity of precious metals. And you also torment chemicals too. It means to agitate something to find out what it's made of. Okay? And I'll tell you something. Somebody who is a Steeler, because the Pittsburgh Steelers just won. They just beat the Titans, which I think is incredibly significant and symbolic, because, of course, the young man who I heard, by the way, is devastated after this accident. Devastated. He just doesn't really know what to do with himself. He's that's why his teammates they came out and they were like, it's not cool that everybody's making this out like he would do this on purpose. The guy's broken. He's devastated. I mean, wouldn't you be devastated? My goodness, if I step on somebody's toe, I'm devastated. But the Steelers won. They're the first team in NFL history to have this result, being outgamed in each of the first 8 games. Let me read that to you again. The Steelers are the first in NFL history. NHL. We're talking about hockey. We're talking about, I don't even know. Why has the Lord got me talking about sports? I was picked on by the sports players when I was young. I never really got into it. I love basketball, though. I do love basketball. But the Steelers, do you know what a Steeler is? A smith. Do you know what a smith is? A smith is what God is called. You know how a silversmith acts? He holds the silver, the metal, over the hottest part of the flame, and he can't take his eye off it. He waits. He lets all the impurities burn up to the surface. They bubble up. Oh, blah, 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 this is bad stuff. This is bad stuff. All that stuff. And he watches and he watches and he watches until the smith, the stealer, sees his image in that very thing that he's making unhappy by tormenting it, burning all the bad stuff away. That's the day we're in. Have you gotten to a place where maybe you never prayed before, but all of a sudden then you find this channel, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I started praying. Now all of a sudden you're like a devout, godly person doing good things, handing out flowers? No, that's not what you do. But being nice to people, being kind to people, forgiving people, working on your relationships, trying to be better in your life. I do. I know that I continue to do this. The Steelers break history. The Rangers breaking history, right? Doing these things against all odds. 8 games, 8 being significant because it's that Ouroboros, right? It's that symbol of infinity. It's a symbol of renewal. This is the day we're in. Infinity. It's the day we're in. New beginnings and all. But Adam Johnson, John the Baptist, there's the picture. But John the Baptist was just was the first man, just like Adam. First man was of the dust of the earth. And in Scripture, because that's what God formed man in the dust. By the way, if you're new to the channel, you come here, I kind of give like a Bible lesson too. I try to, and people tell me that I do a pretty good job of it. So it's like you want to make these things tangible. Was Adam really formed in dust? Well, dust is devoid of water. Water is symbolic of something as well. Dust is also dead flesh, right? But man is formed in that dead flesh. It's formed in the dust of the earth. That first man. But the second man from heaven above. What? Let's read that again. Because Abby, she says, I love you, Meatball. Hey, I love you too, Abby. Thank you very much for the super chat. And everybody, thank you for hitting that like button. When you just exit out of the chat, or you're doing it now as you're watching, just hit that like. What it does is it sends a signal out there, like the bat signal, but better. Bat signals everywhere today, you're going to find. But the first man was made a living soul. The second man, a spirit from heaven above. It's a picture of the first Adam. And what happens to the first Adam? Dies. He's a dead man walking. What happens to John the Baptist? Dies. Head chopped off. Now why? Why? Because who's that religious man that's screaming all the time? Repent, 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 prepare it away, prepare it away, prepare it away. But he's living in the wilderness. He's living like a wild man. He's wearing, pelts of dead animals, which was against the law at the time. He's eating like locusts and wild honey. This is all, it's the first religious man. He's the man that comes first. He prepares the way, but he's not worthy to loose the sandal, if you will. Not worthy to loose it. How cool is that? The religious man can't do what Christ can do. I can't do what God can do. You can't do what God can do. And the day of us thinking we can do it, gone. That's the good news, because God's taken over. Do you know that I didn't prepare this, maybe I'll share it in another article. There was an article. Studies are finding that maybe there is no such thing as free will. Strange. But you know what? In the grand scheme of things, I can do nothing of myself. That's what Jesus says. Everything that I do, everything that I say, everything that I experience, it's God through me. That's the way it is. That's what I'd like to say too. Can an Ethiopian change his skin, or a panther its spots? Neither can you do good who are accustomed to doing evil. Evil is not good. But what happens is John ends up in prison. Doesn't the religious man always end up in a prison of his own doing, if you will? He ends up in prison. And while he's in prison, and his life's hard, he probably shouldn't have gone that day to that building when people said, let's go over to that building and let's let them know. And then people open doors and, what do you know? You're a 20-something-year-old kid and you go in there. And next thing you know, you're looking at, you're in prison. You're probably like, where are you, Lord? Where are you? Are you the one? Is this the time that Jacob's always talking about? Is this the time when Christ comes? Or should we wait for another time? Because it doesn't seem like everything's so great, does it? And that's what John was doing. That's what he was doing. He sent his servants he's like, will you ask this guy? Because, look, I'm here and it's like, it's not looking good for me. And Jesus says to him, he says, today I'm like healing people. And then on the third day, I'm going to be perfected. It's what's happening now in the world. Allison, thank you for the super chat. It's what's happening now. This is the moment we're in. So do you find it strange at all that you have, Adam Johnson and you have Matthew Petgrave, number 22, this story playing out where you have, 5-0, the Rangers, Texas Rangers with the Tav against the Snake, the Adder, Diamondback. Strange. My last couple of shows, speaking of Dark Knights Rising, last couple of shows, I've been talking about Batman. And why? Because we were discussing, the tragedy with Mr. Perry. Matthew, by the way, another tax collector, right? And we were really just kind of blown away by the fact that he was sharing everything about Batman. And so I kind of surmised, I said, you know what? I think that we're going to probably start to see Batman everywhere. And boy, did we. It was like, I actually even titled my video. Let me move this over so you can see it before this happens. I titled the video, The Dark Knight Rises. Look on the thumbnail, top of the page. Very strange that I would, title it that. And then the very next night, P. Diddy goes out as Batman. And you know what ends up becoming like in the trending for music, whatever, is The Darkest Night Rises. Calling P. Diddy like the Darkest Night. Very strange. So there's him in the bat suit. Last year, which is very appropriate because last year this time I talked about the Joker and how Joker 2 Duality is coming out soon. And he was dressed as the Joker last time, P. Diddy. And then he got like a cease and desist or something from, the company that owns it, Warner Brothers. And so he decides to go out in Batman costume. Thank you, Scott Cousins, for the super chat. So happy you're here, man. Appreciate you. He goes out and he gets the Batmobile and everything. Batman. And then all of a sudden, everybody's talking about how the darkest night has risen. Now, above the Batman, you'll see it says Dark Universe. So The Mummy is on Netflix right now. The reason I know this was because once I saw The Darkest Night, kind of, I could say like trending or whatever it is on X, I thought of The Dark Knight Rising and I had just watched it, which was strange. I watched it like a couple of nights ago with Bane. Bane. That's a great movie, by the way, Christopher Nolan. That was probably one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. And that has to do with like the resurrection. Kind of like the character he had taken the fall. Batman had taken the fall for Harvey Dent. Harvey Dent, Two-Face, who, by the way, the lead character just passed away. The guy who does the voice, Maul is his name. I think his name's Richard Maul. He plays Two-Face in the cartoon. He passed away. Two-Face, Harvey Dent. Somebody, I forgot who it was, said that Harvey Dent is Apollo. It's interesting. So Harvey Dent turns out to be a bad guy in the other film, the first film, and Batman decides, Bruce Wayne, he's going to take the fall. He's going to take the fall. He's going to take the fall. Dark Knight Rises, he sort of resurrects. It's very interesting. A lot of people believe that it's very symbolic and that it's connected to the story of Christ. I'm not so sure on that one, but I will say it's strange that Batman was everywhere and is everywhere right now. You got, there's that guy from Binance. He puts out a post where he's dressed up. See, I consider that a Batman too. He put out a post at 11/11 on November 1st. Strange. Aaron Rodgers that everybody was talking about, who had this injury. The night is always darkest before the dawn. You know who knows that well? You know who knows that the night gets really dark before the day breaks? Jacob. Darkest night of his life was when he was wrestling. He was wrestling that man, that angel. I wrestle, so I can get it. I get it. I actually worked for wrestling, which is strange. And actually, the last time I was in the ring, true story, I was working for a TCW. Last time I ever worked in wrestling, I got involved in a match where I choked out a wrestler whose name was Angel, and he got a torn hamstring. I found that interesting. It hit me on the plane. I'm like, oh, wow, Jacob wrestled the Angel. This time the Angel walks away with the bad leg. But I find the dark night of the soul a very important thing because I think that's what we're in. But the bat signal's being flashed everywhere. There's Dan Scavino. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a big Trump guy. He put out a little video, and there's like this one little clip where if you look, you can see the bat signal. Who are they calling the Batman? Who is the Batman? Well, when I was talking about Batman and all this stuff, and I was sharing about Matthew Perry and the Batman, the real Kim Shady again reached out to me and pointed out the fact that Bobby Knight had died. Bobby Knight, the Knight. Don't you find it interesting that in the articles that they're writing about Bobby Knight, about him passing away at 83, that he's pictured talking to somebody with the number 22? I mean, I'm sure it's just a coincidence, right? Nothing more to look at here. But do you know that the university that he worked at, Indiana, by the way, Indiana is going to become pretty important in about a second. He basically was the guy who brought Batman to the big screen. Connected to that. What Kim sent over was the fact that the university president was very connected to bats in a huge way. So here we have the Batman, we have the Knight passing away, 83 years old. It's number 11. Find it interesting? Do you find it interesting? Who do you think is the Batman? I put out a little tweet here. Let me see if this is it. Is this the one? Here we go. Yeah. Darkest of nights of our soul. Darkest of nights of our soul. Speaking it's quick. Darkest of nights of our soul. Speaking of dark nights, I think like you got Batman trending.
Are you Batman?
I am Batman.
Yeah, Batman. Good symbolism there. Who's the Batman? What's the Batman? Once again, that was from my my last video. I hope I transfer it over. That was from my last video. I am the Batman. I'm the Batman. Trump says. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Well, I also found this online. A lot of people compare Trump to the Batman. That's like kind of code now. Batman's a multi-billionaire, so's Trump. Batman, has a tower named after himself, so's Trump. He fought to uphold the law, so does Trump. He says that I am Batman, so did Trump. Born into an already wealthy family, Trump was too. Sought to protect the world from alien threats, seeks to protect the country from illegal aliens. This was just online. They've never been seen at the same time or the same location. Is he the Batman? You got to tell me. That story that I was telling you about from the Batman, it being symbolic, there's something to it, especially since I've really been hitting very, very genuinely about the war in heaven that's taken place, because at the very end, that's what has to happen. You know, the devil loses his place in heaven, and the kingdom of heaven is within you. This is Revelation. I hope that you can catch this. The devil is cast out of heaven and thrown into the earth. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Okay? The earth would be symbolic of your soulish realm. The heaven would be symbolic of your spiritual realm. If the devil is cast out of heaven, that means that the liar that's been in your head, the tear that's been in your head, has been cast out. You're no longer ruled by the lies. You have power, you have choice, because Christ in you takes the wheel. Let Jesus take the wheel, right? So I've been talking about how, you know, we're going to start seeing angels everywhere, I said, you know, because I felt like that was a thing. Vogue's article today, men are on the runways are dressing up as angels. Here's why. And of course, when I put in the dark night of the soul, guess what comes up? The number is 1111. Isn't that strange? A lot of people were sharing things. Fifi on X, she shared out that Dave Grohl was playing with Boy Genius, and of course, they were all dressed up. Like one was like Jesus, other was like Moses, other was like God, but there were angels all over the stage. And of course, the news is right now, angels everywhere you look. And then somebody left a church service. This is just interesting. You can take a look at this. Let me get rid of that, and we'll pull up this one right here. Take a look at this right here, huh?
Oh, yes!
They think these are angels.
Praise God!
You know, they think that these are angels, and
Thank you, Jesus!
you know, it's interesting. There's actually an excuse for that, and I can tell you what that is, because I can tell you that they're not angels. They're not angels. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. They're probably seagulls, is what it is. Because, you know, when things are a certain way, the light hits them. They could be like a flock of birds. So some people say, or maybe, I don't know, it could be something else, but it's not angels. The word angel itself just means messenger. You know, you can have a messenger that is telling the truth, and you can have a messenger that's telling a lie. You can have good angels or demons, right? You got that's the thing that's going on. That's the war. So the idea is that when Christ takes the wheel, you know, he comes, the brightness of his glory, of his coming, his revealing. So the truth of who you are in God is revealed within you. The devil is cast out. Michael takes to do battle. Devil's cast out of heaven, but now he's in the earth. So now he's going to be really doing everything he can to kind of just go off of your baser instincts and everything else until the very end. And in the end, what happens? We're delivered. We're delivered. But right before that end is the dark night of the soul. And I found it strange that 1111 is connected to the dark night of the soul. I didn't know this. That's why when I put in Google, I said, why is 1111 coming up? I did some research into it, and it really just blew my mind. But the dark night of the soul has to do with the veil of illusion being torn from our eyes. Dark night of the soul has to do with us finally waking up from the deception that has taken over. Dark night of the soul is the day we're in, my friends. And it's a good day. But, you know, we're not there yet. We're just kind of like entering in. And it stinks. It really does. It's not exactly that fun when you're going through the dark night of the soul. It's actually pretty crappy. And I know for a lot of you, things are crappy. They can be, at least. But that doesn't mean they have to stay that way. Doesn't mean they have to stay that way. Especially when you know that the day that we're in is a day where all the lies and all the things that have stolen and robbed from you, they're going to be cast away, burned up into the fire. And then the wheat It's going to be gathered up and put into God's storehouse. Remember the Taf, the mark, and the story between the I am the Alpha and the Omega, right? I am the Alpha and the Tav, the beginning and the end. There is a petition, there is a contract, so we can't mess it up. A strong contract. What God has brought together, no man can separate, the scriptures say. Let no one even try to separate it. If Christ be for you, who could be against you? Greater is he that is in me than he that is of the world. Who is of the world? The devil, the liar, the system. The Batman, many say, is an anti-hero. A lot of people are comparing him to the Trumpster. I don't know completely if that's a great thing or not, but I do know that whoever takes over is 100% who God chose. And so I'm going to hold out hope that we're going to see this Jubilee. I'm going to hold out hope that there is a better day on the horizon. Because it says it in the scriptures. A great sign appeared in heaven. We saw this sign. A woman clothed the sun with the moon under her feet and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant with child, crying out to give birth. Are you crying out to give birth? To have the truth finally revealed in you? Then another sign appeared. The dragon stood in front of the woman about to give birth. The liar wants to keep you from peace. The ego of man, the carnal ego of man, stands before that Christ child that was planted in your heart so that it might devour the child the moment the child is born. The moment you say that prayer, the moment you ask God, help me, teach me the truth no matter what the cost, the devil's right there waiting to snatch you up. But guess what? That maid, that's you. It's going to give birth to that male child. That male child in you will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. And the child was snatched up to God, to his throne. The woman fled into the wilderness. That's where we've been. Then a war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. That's happening. That's happening now. There's literally a spiritual battle happening now. This is what we wrestle against. But the devil wasn't strong enough. The lies are not rooted enough. They're going to lose their place in you. And the great dragon was hurled down, the ancient serpent called the devil Satan, who leads the whole world astray, hurled into the earth, and the angels with him. Then I heard a loud voice saying, listen to this, everybody. Now has salvation and power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Messiah have come. The accuser of our brothers and sisters, who accuses them before God day and night, hurled down. They triumphed over him with the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. The blood of the Lamb, the suffering of the Lamb, the suffering of the sacrifice, pet grave. They didn't love their lives unto death so as to shrink back from it. Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in the heavens. What do I say on the channel all the time? If you're doing good, you're going to be okay. Rejoice, you heavens, and those who dwell in them. What is the kingdom of heaven? Righteousness, peace, power, and joy, God's love and spirit. Rejoice those who dwell in peace, in power, in love, in forgiveness. But woe to those in the earth, because the devil's here. He's filled with fury, and he knows that time is short. And that time is short indeed, my friends. So, do me a favor, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you check the like Make sure you leave a comment and tell me what you think. And by the way, I'm getting more and more reviews from people that are getting the sponsor of the show, which I always keep to the end. I hope that you allow me this. A lot of people do it right in the beginning. Trulyfreehome.com. Go there. In the links in the description, everything from the God's Champion merch, Uranus is a planet mug, the links to the novel, everything that supports the channel, Patreon. Doing stuff on Patreon now. We have a new live chat feature. Sign up for Patreon. I'm going to be doing something. there. I have ideas. Every way you help means a lot to me. I'm grateful. God bless you for it. Even if you just hit like, even if you just comment, even if you just share it around. Do all the above, please. And have the best day ever. I got another show. I could go on for another hour. There's more to talk about, but I think that the point has been made. The dark night, it's here. 11/11, baby. All right, I love each and every one of you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Have the best day ever. We'll talk to you next.